This is the Toasted Sister Podcast. I'm Andy Murphy. Before I get started, I'd like to let you know about a new special feature on Native America Calling. That's the 1-hour live radio show about Native issues and topics where I'm the full-time producer. And this special feature is called The Menu for now. It's a monthly episode where I focus on all things new and newsy in the world of Indigenous food and food sovereignty. I'll post about future episodes on Toasted Sister social media, but you might also want to follow and tune into Native America Calling as well. This is the only live radio show of its kind in the country. Jacob Torres is a name you might be familiar with here in New Mexico. He's known as the Space Chili Guy, and it's actually a perfect way to describe what he does at NASA. Yeah, that's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I met Torres about a year ago when I wrote a short story on him for New Mexico Magazine, and he quickly became a friend of mine. When he came to New Mexico for a visit from Florida, I made sure to invite him over so he could share with you the science and engineering work he does to make sure that New Mexico green chili has a spot on board the next mission to Mars. So I'm here in my kitchen here in Albuquerque with Jacob Torres. Jacob, introduce yourself.
Andy, thank you for having me. My name is Jacob Torres. I'm an engineering plant scientist at NASA Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And I get to work with this awesome group, a space crop production group, who's learning how to grow crops in space, later on the moon, eventually on Mars. And one crop that we're growing is New Mexico green chili. So I'm really excited to be here and share that with the world.
All right, we know that green chili is an indigenous plant, so that's why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast here. But first, you live in Florida, but you're here for, you've been here the last couple of days, and it's kind of been crazy. You were telling me people have been wanting you to kiss their babies and stuff like that. Tell me about that. What's that been like coming back to your hometown, Espanola?
It's been so exciting, but I have been in a COVID bubble to work at Kennedy Space Center, to work on flight experiments. You have to maintain a certain level of isolation to go on site, or otherwise you have to telework. And we had this experiment, PH04, which was a flight experiment happening during COVID, and I wanted to be involved with it. I wanted to be in it. So that meant that I had to isolate at home and only work, and I couldn't come home to New Mexico to visit my family and all of that other stuff. So it's been since December 2019 that I've been back, and then now that I've been here, we've done so many things since then, like sent New Mexico chili to space. I have the activity, the Space Chili Grow a Pepper Plant Challenge, where we sent seeds all over the world, and I just haven't been home to New Mexico physically to talk to my neighbors and stuff about it. So it's an exciting time. It's an exciting trip because everybody's just super excited to say hello and get a mission badge, which I'm handing out. And it's just such a unique experience because when I left, I was, kind of maybe not super popular. I was maybe a little bit of a nerd kind of thing. And now I came back as the Space Chili Guy. And it's so exciting that my community is excited to have me and see me and do all that stuff. So it's been just super humbling. It's a super humbling, and I've been having a lot of fun.
So, yeah, you've been getting a lot of attention from the press, including me. I did a short piece on you about last year for our New Mexico Magazine big chili spread. It was the chili issue of New Mexico Magazine from last year. And that's where I kind of first learned about you. I think the editor no, I found you on Facebook because I think maybe we have some common friends, and I pitched it over to the editor, and I'm like, "Hey, have you guys heard of what Jacob's doing in Florida at NASA?" And they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Let's fit him into the chili issue." And that was kind of like last minute. That's why it was kind of like a short piece. But for that really short piece, it was probably like, 150 words long. We talked on the phone for what, almost 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, about New Mexico, about Chile and everything. Let's go back a little bit. Can you talk more about what you're doing at NASA with green chili? Kind of start at the beginning, where
Okay.
how did green chili become a thing?
NASA has a mission to do human exploration in other environments, like going to the moon, staying on the moon, living on the moon, going to Mars and starting a Mars colony. Along the way, that requires that the crew will need to have food and nutrition, and those things are so important to be able to accomplish your mission. But the food that we're able to send up to them is limited. One, of course, it has a weight to it. So, everything that you launch up to space has weight, and it's very expensive to launch. To send food up to them, they don't have ovens, or you don't have a fire or anything to cook food on the space station or in a space type environment. So you have to supply the astronauts with food that's ready to go, which means freeze dried meals. They have all types of meals that they eat. They're really super, super awesome. They're made and prepared at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. But the big problem with that is, over a long duration, there are nutrients and vitamins in those meals that degrade over time. They have a half-life. So, if we're talking about going to Mars, depending on where the planet is, it can be a 2-year to 6-month trip to get there. And during that time, that food is expiring, those nutrients and those vitamins. So how do we make them up? We could send more food, more freeze-dried meals up, or are there alternatives? Is there something that we can do? Is there a way to get fresh food into their diets? And that's very important too, to have fresh crops or fresh type of foods into your meals. And NASA scratched their heads for a little while. We went over different possibilities that we can do. And in the end, we decided that we could grow crops, fresh crops, grow them in space, grow them in the spacecraft, grow them in a controlled environment on the moon or on Mars, and use that as a way to make up those lost nutrients. So I have this amazing team called the Space Crop Production Team at NASA Kennedy Space Center. Kennedy Space Center is known for launching rockets. That's where the Apollo rockets launch from. That's where the space shuttle launches from. The SpaceX rockets that we all see launch from there also. But we're also the designated plant growing center for NASA. And our whole mission is to figure out what it takes, what is the science, what type of hardware, what practices do you have to do to grow different crops in space. But there's challenges. One, we couldn't use the sun. We're testing on the International Space Station. There's 2 systems on there. One is Veggie, which is a real simple system. It's a light with a bag, and you can put maybe 6 plants underneath it. And the second one is the Advanced Plant Habitat, which controls the environment, and it automates everything. We can control it from Earth, and that's kind of what we're doing. But we have these 2 systems to just learn the basics. There aren't pollinators up there, so no bees. We have to use artificial lighting, an artificial environment, and just some crops don't like that. They have evolved for their whole period, their whole time evolved growing outdoors under a certain type of light and dirt and all these things. What do you have to do to grow a plant in a controlled environment? So we started simply. There's a test plant that we called a Arabidopsis. It's technically a weed, but it grows very easily, and it allows us to grow a plant and then do like genome sequencing and other things in a short amount of time, and we learn a lot about growing plants that way. Then we moved into things like leafy greens. Leafy greens, lettuce, pak choi, Mizuna mustard, those are things that we've grown in the past. But they are short-term crops. They don't require pollination, and you can pick and eat them. But we're talking like 28 days when you plant the seed and harvest it. But if you want to grow, I guess I should say that we couldn't live on lettuce alone. You would have to have a diverse amount of crops to eat to be able to supplement the diet. And that means going into fruiting things that flower, that require pollination and need then fruit or have vegetables. That requires, a longer duration grow out, more than 28 days. It means crew interaction to maybe pollinate the flowers or thin them down and other things. And so these are things that just haven't been done yet over a long duration in space. If you're gonna start branching out into flowering crops, you want to find one that's very hardy, almost a good bet. And in our search, we learned that peppers are a good variety or a good plant to grow because of the way that they grow. And it doesn't require cross-pollination. You can tap the flower and that'll pollinate it. They have a lot of nutrients in them like vitamin C, vitamin B, and creatine. And then the heat is also good for astronauts. And then if we could find a pepper that would grow into our environment and fit really good, it would be just a good bet for us to see, expand our horizons to grow other crops. And in our search, I work with this wonderful horticulturist. Her name is Lachelle Spencer at Kennedy Space Center. And, once we start talking about what plant are we going to grow in space, we're going to grow peppers. Great. Well, which pepper do you grow? Which one do you pick? There's our friends in Carolina who say the Carolina Reaper is the best one. There's our friends. We got messages from Bulgaria. The Bulgarian carrot is the way to go. And then there's us in New Mexico. We have the best peppers in the world. So which ones do we pick? In the end, it turns into this crop selection scientific process where we order seeds from around the world. We'll grow them in test style in our growth environment and see which ones work the best. And in the end, there was these New Mexico varieties that just didn't seem to mind that they were under artificial light or in this small chamber and stuff like that. So ultimately we evolved to realize that the New Mexico peppers were the best for our environment. And we started digging into those, and we landed on one variety, which is a hybrid. It's a cross between the New Mexico Big Gem pepper and the traditional Espanola pepper. It's called the Espanola Improved. It was derived by the New Mexico Chili Pepper Institute, and we're growing those, and those are the ones that we've sent to space. And essentially, it's a gateway plant that if we're able to grow peppers with this one, then it would open the door to doing other things like tomatoes, maybe, and cucumbers is one thing that I would like to grow. But more fruit and vegetables. If this grow out with peppers grows well, then we will expand to do other crops in the end.
That is so interesting. That's fascinating. I think I asked you, like, what does your lab look like? And you're like, imagine what a science lab looks like on TV. It looks like that. And I'm like, looky. That's so awesome, so high tech. And, you definitely have a lot of energy and enthusiasm for your work here. But when you guys were testing out all of these peppers and then came down to the Espanola improved one, how did that, like were you just like hoping in the background, like, I hope it's the Espanola one because you're from there? What was that like for you to know finally that, oh, I think this is the one that we're gonna go with?
I love that question. Thank you so much for asking it. It may be strange to say this, but I am a scientist. That is what I am by core. That's what I do. And I was very worried about skewing the selection because I may be a little bit biased. And so I instead of being excited, I actually had a lot of anxiety over it. Because when the Espanola improved started to show that this is the one that grows within our chamber, it likes to grow within this space, all of these things, I was nervous that I may have had an effect that would skew that selection. So I didn't say anything. That I was from Espanola, New Mexico. I just didn't say anything, and I let the science play out. And in the end, the selection wasn't done by me. It's done by a science team. We get together, we throw out the pros and the cons, and the team as a whole decides which one the crop should be. And when they said that the Espanola improved is going to be the one, that's when I kind of came out and said, oh, by the way, my hometown is Espanola. And so... So it's been exciting, but at the same time, as a scientist, I have a little bit of anxiety because I don't want to be a biased researcher.
Yeah, I totally get that. Let's just go back a little bit. You're talking about this whole space of time, this whole chunk of time here. What year did some of these things happen?
First, I have to say that New Mexico peppers were under review by NASA before I got there. And I've talked to my great friend, NASA scientist, Dr. Ray Wheeler, and he is like our he's like the grandfather of the space biology program. He's been growing with NASA since the 70s. Many people may have seen the movie The Martian, and Mark Watney and the potatoes. Mark Wahlberg? Or Mark Watney is the name of the character, and Matt Damon plays Mark Watney.
Oh, okay,
right?
Okay.
Well, that character was based off of actual research, and that research was Ray Wheeler. So what I'm saying is that the real Mark Watney is Ray Wheeler, and I got to work with him. And his parents passed away in Los Lunas. They retired and passed away in Los Lunas. His name's Wheeler, so Wheeler Peak is the largest peak in New Mexico, and they just love New Mexico. So New Mexico peppers have been on the radar for NASA for a long time. But it was when I joined the team in 2018 is when they started talking about growing peppers in the advanced plant habitat. The APH is a fairly new system. We do a series of experiments called the pH experiments, which are the plant habitat experiments. PH01 was done with UNM and Los Alamos National Labs with NASA to grow Arabidopsis, and that was the first one that kicked it off. There was PH02, which grew space radishes that you can look up. We grew those during the pandemic. PH03 hasn't happened yet, but I'm also working on that. And PH04 is hatched to ISS, growing peppers in space. And we started talking about that during my internship in 2018 during the summer. And so I had meetings with NASA, and they're just so cool. Like, you're not just an intern when you show up there. You are part of the team. They call us sprouts. Students planting plants of use to space, something like that. And so I'm a sprout. And they make you a full member of the team, and you sit there in the meetings, and they started talking about hatch. And I'm thinking in my mind, hatch? There's a town where I'm from called Hatch, New Mexico. They grow peppers. And they're all, yeah, the Big Jim. I was like, oh, you guys are talking about Hatch peppers? And they're like, yes. We want to name this project Hatch to ISS, launching the Hatch Big Jim up to the International Space Station. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So then I got involved in the conversation, and the whole thing about growing a long duration crop is one, energy consumption. We're using a lot of energy to grow these peppers. Two, crew interaction to get an astronaut to go in and like pollinate flowers or it's really, really hard. So if you pick a pepper that grows a little bit faster, maybe it turns red faster, you can harvest it faster. The crew is eating something fresh quicker, but also you're reducing the energy consumption and crew time. And so my thought was, in northern New Mexico, it's still the mountains, still the Rocky Mountains in northern New Mexico. Hatch is down south, and it's in the desert. It's down in the desert. It's not sea level, but it's hotter down there. Winter takes longer to get down to Hatch. The northern New Mexico varieties have to mature before the winter comes, before winter shows up and stuff like that. And so I just recommended, hey, if we want to save some crew time, maybe we should try some of the northern varieties. And they said, great. Immediately, they contacted the New Mexico Chili Pepper Institute. And we worked to get different varieties, like a Chimayo version, the Española Improved, which is a hybrid. There's another version called the traditional New Mexico 6-4. And so there's just these different New Mexico varieties that we tried. And the Española Improved matured, turned red literally 10 days sooner than the Big Jim did. And that was the definition, or what led to us using that Española Improved. But so long story short is that peppers have been part of the topic or thought for NASA for a long time, but actually implementing it and making it happened around 2018. And then from 2018 until now, till 2020, when we launched them into space, that's kind of how long it took to get them up there.
So what's next for this mission? I mean, are we talking about 2050 when we're gonna go to Mars? Like, what's next?
The immediate next, right now we are at day 32. We're doing a 120-day grow out. We're trying to do everything we can to follow the local tradition. So in this case, that means chili with an E. Which is a big thing, and then also harvesting the way that the local community does, which means harvesting at green at 80 days, and then harvesting at red at 120 days. And the hope is that the astronauts will be asking the state question, red or green, which one will they get to have? We have got approval from the flight surgeon for them to eat some of the peppers. But really, our only hope, our success criteria for this mission is to grow one pepper. If we get one, then that's a success. We're hoping to get more. And next, that means that if it's successful, that opens the door to doing exploration, like growing chili on the moon, or in a controlled environment. And NASA is really they're known for sticking with things that work. So if we put this work into this cultivar and it grows really well, that's a good possibility that this will be a staple of our growth operations from now on. So the Artemis missions are coming up in the next few years, where we go to the moon, and we definitely will grow crops there. They're doing a station, like an International Space Station, but not around the Earth. It'll be in a halo orbit above the moon. We'll get to grow crops there. And then ultimately, we want to go to Mars. We're shooting for the 2030s to go to Mars and do controlled environment grow outs there. But the next immediate thing that we have our eyes on are the Artemis missions and growing plants on the moon, and hopefully chili will be included.
Nice. So, do you think the astronauts are going to be equipped with like recipes, or is it just eating these peppers raw?
That is such a great question. For right now, we'll be eating them raw. One very nice thing about peppers is that they're enclosed in this seed pouch, and they have a shiny coating around them, and then all of the meat and nutrients is on the inside, which makes it easy to sanitize it and then eat it. Food safety is a huge concern, and then making sure the crops that we grow don't make the crew sick is very important too.
So, you don't only grow peppers at at NASA. You grow a whole bunch of peppers at your home in Florida. You just did a harvest. You're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do with all this. I'm just gonna leave some at my neighbor's house. Tell me about that journey, growing at your own home, and then what do you do with some of these peppers? I know you've eaten some of them raw, but what's your favorite thing to do with all the different types of peppers you grow at your home?
That's great. For the most part, I give them away because I grow all these amazing peppers. So it's a continuous learning process. I did grow chili here in New Mexico growing up. Not on a grand scale, but we always had a garden with our own chili growing. When I went to New Mexico State University, I worked with a department called MTech, and we worked with the New Mexico Chili Association, and we built agricultural equipment for farmers, like destemming, harvesting, and things like that. So then, going to Florida and growing space chili in the lab, I realized that I've never grown a pepper plant in a controlled environment and watched it. You know, we grow it out in our garden. We go out to harvest it when the time comes. But how often do you grow a pepper plant, you know, in your living room or in a controlled environment and watch what happens? And I learned, and I realized that I had a lot to learn. When the first pepper plant we grew inside, the tips of the pepper started to turn red. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And I messaged Ray Wheeler, look at these, Ray Wheeler. And he's like, yeah, the tips start to turn red before the rest of the fruit does. I'm like, oh, I did never notice that before. So I realized that I needed to take some homework home and start growing peppers at home as well. So I'm growing peppers inside my house, and then I'm growing them outside as well. And I end up having all kinds. And it's safe to say that I pretty much impose our culture on all the people around me, because if it's green chili harvest, everybody's getting green chili that day. And if I have peppers, then I'm handing them out to everybody. So I get to grow these peppers that are part of my home and my culture. It makes me feel like I'm home, and then I get to share it with people and spread who we are. And I assure you that everybody on my team knows where New Mexico is and what New Mexico chili is, and it's like because of stuff like that.
And you know, you're sharing chili with the world because you have this group. I always forget the name of it. I'll let you introduce the group. But through this group, people can really learn how to grow inside of their own homes. You give them a little packet of chili seeds. Really, it's about promoting science and really just spreading that New Mexico love. Tell me about that group and how people could maybe get involved if they wanted to.
I learned that you can use a sentence as a title, which when I was coming up with the name for this activity, I couldn't think of what it would be. And finally, I said, you know what? The Space Chili Grow a Pepper Plant Challenge. And that's the name of it. And it is a mouthful, but for me, I was working at Kennedy Space Center, and I was the only New Mexican who got to see this chili and all this stuff going on. And I'm like, man, my neighbors wouldn't believe me if I told them. And so I wanted to find a way to get people involved so they can experience it as well. When will there ever be a New Mexico? When will there ever be a first fruit in space? We should enjoy it and be a part of it. And wanted to find a way for that to happen. And also, there's only so many of us in the lab growing plants, and I mentioned that we have a lot to learn and a lot to do, and Lachelle and I alone just couldn't do it, so I needed more help. And in those two needs there to share the Space Chili and then get more research done, the Space Chili Grow a Pepper Plant Challenge arose as a way to bring people in. They get to people do send me a message. I'll mail out a mission badge with Martinez Chimayo seeds with a little bit of instruction. The space farmer, anybody, will get those seeds, grow the pepper plant at home, and then record some data for me. Like, let me know how long it took to start growing, germinate. When did it start flowering? When did you start fruiting? When did you have green chili? When did you have red chili? Just recording those things, and then in the different environments that everybody's growing them, turns into a trial that I can put into a database, and then it helps us to learn how to grow our peppers well. And at the same time, the people who are participating are involved in Space Chili. You're learning about science, what it's like to be a scientist, agriculture, engineering, because we're making the things to grow our pepper plants in. All of these things turned into this amazing activity. It came out right at the beginning of the pandemic, and people were staying home. They needed an activity, something to do. Students couldn't go to school, and they needed to stay engaged. And so I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, where the Space Chili Challenge turned into this immense thing where people are growing plants around the world. And we literally have New Mexico chili seeds growing in every continent of the world. In Antarctica, ISS Eden, my colleague Jess Bunchek is growing Chimayo and Española chili seeds. We're in Australia, New Zealand, at least 5 countries in Africa, all through the European Union, and everybody are growing these New Mexico chilies, recording data for me, but then they're also learning about agriculture and all that on the side. And so it's just this amazing activity that has been just wonderful for everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely been really cool to see young people really getting involved in this. And I remember I follow the group. I've been following the group since I did that article about you, and I'm seeing people grow out these chilies, and some of them are saying that, oh my gosh, it's hot, or what do I do with them now? And I'm seeing people put them into really interesting dishes. I mean, here in New Mexico, we're just like original with it. It just becomes a sauce. It just becomes roasted into, your hamburgers and on top of your steak and whatever. So we're kind of, really traditional like that. But to see what other people are doing with it around the world, I mean, that's really been kind of fascinating. And I did offer up. Oh yeah, I offered up that one recipe in case people wanted to make red chili sauce, like have their green chilies turn into red chili, and hopefully people tried it out there. I mean that's and green chili's awesome. It's good, but I think I'm a red chili girl. I made that transition like a couple years ago, and I don't think I'm gonna go go back. But I love red chili, so I decided to share a recipe in case other people wanted to do that with their red chili. But what do you think is going to be next for that group, or what do you want to do next with this group?
First, I want to thank you so much for that recipe. It meant so much to us as a community because we have the agricultural side handled, but what to do with our peppers after, I'm not a great cook. I don't know what to do with them. And so you posted that recipe for a red chili sauce to make a sauce out of maybe 4 peppers, which is something that our chilies, our growers would have. We don't have a field. We just have a few from our pepper plant, and we want to eat them. And I saw several people use it and post it, and we had the space chili fiestas, and at least 3 people had made space chili dip with your sauce, and then presented it at our symposium and stuff. So thank you so much. I even know that it was made in Japan. I was so stoked about that. And in the end, it's all a community. Everybody has their own perspective. I have the plant growth and the science part, and you have like the preparation and the food part. We have artists who've come in who've made the mission badge. There's researchers from Wisconsin who've done the data, and it's just turned into this amazing thing where it's an opportunity for not only students and education, but, people like me, regular people who want to be involved. It's a way for them to get involved without all the red tape that you normally experience with a NASA type of activity. And so my hope is to continue to do the Space Chili Challenge as long as people are interested in it. Maybe we will evolve to do other things. Maybe we follow NASA as they evolve to other crops, and maybe it turns into the Space Chili Grow a Tomato Plant Challenge. And if we turn into a mechanism that helps NASA do some research, grow in different environments that we're unable to do, it could be of value to them, and then we all can keep learning and doing fun space biology stuff on the side. So to turn it into an educational thing, I do bring in at least 2 classrooms a week, and so I always have a classroom in the background. We don't get to see them because they're not allowed to post on Facebook and stuff like that. So there's only a percentage that we see in the group page, but to have that continue, and then for it to be a research outlet for NASA to explore other crops in the future, we literally have an army of space farmers growing with us, and so I would just like to keep that growing. That would be the sweetest.
That's awesome, an army of space growers. So let's take it back a little bit. You kind of already talked about growing up as a gardener. Expand on that a little bit more, and then talk about how you landed at NASA. I mean, I think you've you did a couple of years in the restaurant world, right? That's fascinating too.
When I first graduated high school, I firmly believed that I didn't need to go to college, that I don't need to do that. I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, and I always, I'm kind of a rocker. And at the time, the Hard Rock Cafe was like, the Hard Rock Cafe in Las Vegas was the place to be. And I just wanted to work there. So I started bussing tables when I was 17 years old on the Vegas Strip. It wasn't long before, I started to work my way into being a supervisor and then management. By the time I was 21 years old, I was a manager of the restaurant there. I had the honor of meeting Bill Murray, the actor and the comedian, in Las Vegas, and he invited me to come open restaurants with him. So I opened 3 restaurants with Bill Murray, the Murray Brothers Caddyshack, which is based off the movie The Caddyshack. And basically, the Murray family just wanted to have a place where they could eat and drink for free at their favorite golf places. So Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, St. Augustine, Florida, where the World Golf Hall of Fame is, and then Orlando, which is a huge golfing place too. And so I got to open those restaurants and work with them, and it was absolutely amazing and fun. But by the time I was 22, I was kind of already at the top of the food chain of running and managing restaurants. All I had left was to own it, And I just felt in my heart that there was more for me, that I could do more. And it took me a little while to derive that the way that I was going to do that was to go to school and get a degree. So I quit my job. To their dismay, they were not happy that I quit my job. And I moved home with my mom, moved into my room from high school and all of that stuff. And I enrolled in classes at Northern New Mexico College, which is the community college in Espanola. And I got a 2-year degree there. I thought that would be great. I'm going to do that. Renewable energies was my thing at that time. So I'm going to install solar panels in Santa Fe and Taos, and that's going to be my job. But after I graduated, I got a letter from New Mexico State University. And they said, hey, if you come here to get your 4-year degree, we'll give you a scholarship. So they gave me a transfer achievement scholarship, which was paid by the New Mexico Lottery, to go to NMSU in Las Cruces and get my engineering degree. And I always joked about being an engineer. Mom, I'm going to be an engineer one day. Things like that. But my math skills weren't there, and I just thought that this wasn't for me. I couldn't do it. But I did. I ended up finding these teachers that taught math in a different way than they did at public school. I started to understand some of the concepts. I realized that I'm really good with my hands, and then I don't know, I wouldn't say that I'm an artist, but I've always been very creative, and that creativity works good for developing new products and developing new inventions and building things and solving problems. And so that worked really good. School opened the door to something that I didn't even know I had. And then once I had that degree and that skill, there were people in the industry looking for that skill. So I got hired by an engine manufacturer called Cummins. They're one of the largest diesel engine manufacturers in the world. I am a renewable energy guy. Diesel engines are the dirtiest engines on planet Earth. In 2017, the EPA were putting out the highest standards that they've ever done. Every engine or on highway, anything had to meet these standards to drive. And so my job was to make the dirtiest engine in the world the cleanest engine that had ever been made at that type. So I was an engineer. I am an engineer that developed and designed an engine. I built one. It came out in 2017. We met those EPA standards. It was great. It was exciting. Guess what? I got bored with engines. An engine is an engine, It could be a small one in a little car. It could be a huge one in a train. They're all the same parts. I felt like I wanted to do more. Purdue University is in Indiana, which is where I was working, and I suddenly became a resident there. Neil Armstrong went to Purdue. Drew Brees went to Purdue. Buzz Aldrin went, there's just these amazing people. And oh gosh, if I could be an engineer to go to Purdue University, I'm going to do that. So I applied for one school. That was it. If I got in, I was going to go. If I didn't, I wasn't. I studied for and took the GRE exam, and I got accepted into Purdue. They gave me a teaching assistantship, and I taught to pay for tuition. Well, it went. When you go into graduate school, you have to pick a research topic. What am I going to research? I didn't even cover the plant growth stuff that I did when I was growing up, but I grew up growing plants, in particular with my grandmother. She had this grand paradise of a garden in the middle of the desert. Beautiful flowers, grass, and everything, and then everything else is just really dry. When she started to get old, it was hard for her to keep it up, and it was hard to see that garden degrade, so I took it over. And so in that, I always grew plants, and it was through my grandma and all those things. So then fast forward to Purdue University. Was research done by NASA in the 1970s to use plants to filter air, and primarily to filter them in a space capsule. Where people are in there, and you have to have systems that filter the air and remove the carbon and volatile organic compounds. And they thought, wow, maybe we can use pike remediation in plants to do that. And so there's all this research that says that these plants filter air, and the thought was, can we set them up in a way where we can pull air through the roots and filter that air for a household? And what came out was a bio wall. We call it a bio wall, which is it's a botanical air filter. It uses plants. It's set up in a way. It's hooked up to your air conditioner system and pulls air through the roots. The roots hold on to volatile organic compounds or particulates, and then it circulates it into the house. And essentially, that was a controlled environment. It turned lights on and off. It irrigated. It recorded temperature and humidity data that we could see through our phone or on our computer. And when I applied for an internship at NASA, they saw that and they were like, wow, that's what we're doing, but we're just growing crops. Instead of filtering air, we're growing crops. Come hang out with us. So I applied for my internship with NASA. I got a call back from the food production and microgravity team. I didn't Google their names before because I was scared to know who they were, so I could talk to them normal. Yeah. And I did. We had this wonderful interview. It was so cool. And in the end, they invited me over. I stayed for 10 weeks, and it was great. And then they said, why don't you stay longer? And I said, great. And then after my second internship, there was a job position available, and it kind of, they can't say apply for it, but they're like, if you applied for it, we would seriously consider you. And I applied for it, and then they gave me a full-time position. And pretty much what I'm doing my job now, engineering plant scientist, is what I did as an intern. And I'm just like a perpetual intern forever. And it's just so crazy. But
I love your story. Things came into the right place, but also it's just like applying yourself and, getting over your own fears and maybe even your own self-doubt and everything. I mean, that takes a lot. And here you are, like, kind of like a local celebrity. You're the Chile guy. You're helping NASA with, these great projects. Maybe my last question here would be, you think you'll ever get bored like you did with engines, with restaurants? You think you'll ever get bored with space Chile and space agriculture? Like, what do you envision for yourself in the future?
That's a great question. What does my future hold? Will I evolve into a NASA researcher? Or will I eventually come home and start space chili farms in New Mexico? Will I do botanical air filtration? All these things. I think that that's still up in the air. I didn't know that space crop production existed before I applied for the job. So it wasn't in my plans to be a space farmer long term. I don't think that I could get bored with it. It's really cool. It's kind of like the Wild West because there has been very few developments for this specific purpose. So as an engineer, as an inventor of this hardware, it's an open territory for me to try all kinds of things that haven't been done. And so I'm just having a lot of fun doing that. But I envision in the end that I will mature into doing my own projects and moving beyond the chilies to do maybe other crops, other cultivars, or pick up other causes. I would love to come home to New Mexico at some point and farm chili here, start agriculture and start sharing that with the next generation to pick up our traditions and continue them into the future, because there isn't as many students and youngsters farming anymore. And I would just love to bring that back, to bring it full circle to the core of who we are: farming, agriculture, family, all of those things. And I just would love to come and promote that. So in the long term, I kind of do envision that I will probably end up back here in New Mexico and doing some type of farming and education along the way, and try to having fun too.
You have a lot of pride for New Mexico. I think a lot of us were born here. We kind of, play around outside, move away for a little bit, and then eventually we move back because this is a very, very special place here. And for me as Navajo, I mean, this is where I belong. This is like, in my DNA. If I'm anywhere else, it just doesn't feel right. Like I can go to a vacation to some of the most beautiful places and have fun out there, but I would never think to myself like, oh, I could move here. I just want to be back in my desert here. Talk a little bit about Española. Like where does your pride come from?
Sure, that's a good one. I think that we are raised from the very beginning to represent where you are from for whatever reason, but it's hardwired in us to go wherever you are and say, I'm from Española. And so now I am just doing what I was raised to do. I also have to say that these things that I've been doing, going to Purdue University, now going to NASA, there are almost never somebody from Española in there. And so I feel that it's super important that I let everybody know that I am a kid from this place, and I can do some good too. Now there's the other side of that coin that if I didn't do well, if something, didn't go as planned, they would always remember that was the Española guy, the Northern New Mexican guy. Maybe we won't pick another one of those, But to me, I feel like what I'm doing is an opportunity. It was an open door for me. If I let everybody know where I'm from, maybe that opens the door for others to come behind me. Remember that guy from New Mexico? We want to have another one of those kind of thing. And so all of that, it's hardwired in us to share where we're from. And then also I kind of want to open doors for the future for people to come in and stuff. And so I just always absolutely share that this is my town and I'm from this place. And of course we're known for having some problems and issues. People may see them on the news, and I think that that's even more of a reason for me to be loud. We have a local newspaper, and they report the news, and there's a lot of bad things that happen. There's all kinds of people saying we are the worst. This is horrible. Your town is not a good one. And I feel like there needs to be a voice on the other side that says, no, we are good. We have skills. We are just as smart, and we can do these things. And I feel like that's my job.
That was Jacob Torres. A link to the Space Chili Grow a Pepper Plant Challenge Facebook page is in the show notes. Special thanks to Sol Traverso for his editing help with this episode. Music for Toasted Sister is made by C.W. Ione. Check out his music at cwione.com. That's cwayon.com. And thank you so much for listening. Please support this podcast on Patreon. You could also let everybody you know about this show and leave a positive review on iTunes. The Toasted Sister podcast is going to be 5 years old in January. That's 5 years of independent food journalism and telling our native stories in podcast form for thousands and thousands of listeners across the world. Thank you for listening to my work and learning about food with me. I love what I do here, even though it's difficult, but this podcast is really the love of my life, and it's definitely changed my life. So until next time, I'm Andy Murphy, creator, producer, and host of the Toasted Sister podcast.